Do you know what separates the people who dream about success from the ones who actually live it? It's not luck, it's not some secret gift, it's discipline, and Neville Goddard understood this more deeply than most people ever will. Let me tell you why this matters. Most people drift through life, wishing, hoping, daydreaming about a better future, but they never train themselves to direct their imagination. And the truth is, imagination without discipline is just wasted energy. But when you discipline your mind, when you force yourself to stay consistent with your vision, life bends in your favor. Neville Goddard always taught that your imagination is the creative power of God within you. But here's the catch: if you can't discipline yourself to hold a mental image, to stay loyal to that inner world regardless of what the outer world is showing you, then you'll keep falling back into old patterns. Think about it. You decide one night you'll imagine yourself healthy, wealthy, or loved. For a few minutes you feel great, you believe it. But the next day, the bills come in, someone says something negative, and you're back to doubt. That's not manifestation, that's just emotional drifting. Discipline is what locks your mind onto the state you want to live in, until it becomes your natural reality. Neville would often repeat, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled." But assumption isn't a one-time act. It's not something you do only when you're in a good mood. It's a lifestyle, a discipline. You train yourself, moment by moment, to return again and again to the inner world you've chosen. And that takes effort. People often want the result without the discipline, but you can't have one without the other. Even when your senses scream the opposite, you must hold firm to your assumption. That's the kind of inner strength Neville pointed us toward. Now here's something that can change how you see discipline forever. Most people think discipline means forcing yourself to do things you hate. Wake up early, exercise when you don't feel like it, cut off distractions. Yes, that's part of it. But Neville's discipline was about controlling the direction of your imagination. You already imagine all day long, but without awareness, your imagination gets hijacked by fear, doubt, and memories of failure. Real discipline is saying, no matter what comes up, I will direct my imagination to the scene I choose. That's true mastery. Let me give you an example. Let's say someone wants to be financially free. They imagine living in abundance, but 2 days later, fear of debt pulls them back. Discipline is when, instead of spiraling, they immediately pause, close their eyes, and return to the inner scene of freedom. They don't indulge fear, they replace it with the vision. Over time, that disciplined return builds a new mental state. And as Neville said, states create reality. Your outer world mirrors your inner persistence. This is where most people fail. They underestimate how much consistency matters. If you can't stick to a gym routine for a week, how will you stick to an imaginal routine that requires you to hold faith in the unseen? That's why discipline is not optional. It's the bridge between what Neville taught and the actual experience of transformation. You don't discipline yourself once, you make it your daily practice. And the beautiful thing is, once it becomes a habit, it no longer feels like discipline. It feels like alignment. There's something magnetic about people who live in disciplined imagination. They carry a calmness and assurance, because they know reality bends to them. They don't rush, they don't force, they don't beg. They simply know. And that knowing only comes when you've trained your mind not to run back to fear every time circumstances shake you. Neville's work is about reprogramming yourself to stay in faith no matter what. Here's the challenge most of us face. The outer world is loud, full of distractions, opinions, and problems. The inner world is quiet, but it's where the real power is. If you're not disciplined, you'll always get dragged by the outer. But when you are disciplined, you realize the outer is just a shadow of the inner, and so you don't let it disturb you. That's why Neville would always say, live as though it's already done. Discipline makes that possible. Because without discipline, you'll live as though it's not done, and the outer will control you. So ask yourself honestly, how disciplined are you with your imagination? Do you drift into fear and worry more than you deliberately enter your desired state? Do you repeat old stories about failure more than you rehearse new scenes of success? If so, that's exactly why your life keeps repeating patterns. Discipline is the reset button. It's the commitment to practice new imaginal scenes until they replace the old ones. And don't make the mistake of thinking discipline kills joy. In fact, it frees you. Imagine a musician. They only sound effortless on stage because of hours of disciplined practice. Your imagination works the same way. At first, it feels like effort to keep bringing your mind back. But soon, it becomes natural. You don't struggle to imagine success, you live in it automatically. That's the reward of discipline. Neville also warned against half-hearted practice. If you visualize while doubting, or affirm while secretly expecting failure, you're not disciplined. You're split. Real discipline is total loyalty to the end, no matter how long it takes. And it's usually when people are about to give up that the breakthrough is closest. So discipline is also the patience to stay the course even when nothing seems to change. Because the unseen is always working before it becomes seen. I want you to think of discipline as self-love. If you truly love yourself, you won't let your mind wander into fear all day. You'll guide it back gently but firmly. That's not punishment, that's protection. You're protecting your future by disciplining your imagination today. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. One day you'll look back and realize the life you're living is the exact picture you once held in imagination. That's the fruit of discipline. So the question isn't whether imagination works, it always works. The real question is, are you disciplined enough to direct it? If you are, then your life will reflect your chosen vision. If you're not, then your life will reflect your scattered thoughts. That's the law. Discipline is the difference between wishful thinking and creation. It's the bridge between Neville's words and your experience. And if you're listening to this right now, consider this your reminder. Don't just hear these ideas, practice them. Train your mind like you train your body. Every time you drift into doubt, bring yourself back. Every time fear tries to hijack your imagination, replace it with the vision. Do it again and again until it sticks. That's how you force yourself to be disciplined. Not by harshness, but by consistency. And when you do, you'll discover what Neville was pointing to all along, that you are the operant power, and discipline unlocks it. You see, what most people don't realize is that discipline in imagination is no different than discipline in life. If you want to master the piano, you don't play once a week and expect to become great. You show up every day, no matter how you feel, and you practice. The same is true with Neville's teachings. If you only imagine when you're in a good mood, or only affirm when you feel inspired, you'll never build the consistency that brings results. Real transformation is born in the days when you don't feel like doing it, but you choose to anyway. That's when you're reprogramming the deepest layers of your mind. Neville would often use stories to show how imagination, plus discipline, shapes reality. One of his most famous stories is of a woman who wanted to move into a new home. She didn't have the money, she didn't know how, but she disciplined herself every night to imagine walking through the front door, feeling the keys in her hand, and hearing her family laugh inside. She did this consistently, even when her outer circumstances gave her no reason to believe. And within months, everything shifted, the right opportunity, the right timing, and suddenly she was in the exact home she imagined. That wasn't luck. That was disciplined imagination shaping her world. But here's the key: discipline doesn't mean rigidity. It doesn't mean you force yourself until you're exhausted. It means you develop a gentle but firm persistence. You become aware when your thoughts drift, and you bring them back. You repeat this enough until your mind learns new habits. And remember, habits are destiny. What you repeatedly think, feel, and assume becomes your life. So ask yourself, what habits of imagination are you building right now? Because your future depends on it. Many people ask, but how do I stay disciplined when everything around me says the opposite? And the answer is simple. You remind yourself that the outer world is not the cause. The outer world is the effect. It's the shadow of yesterday's imaginal acts. And shadows don't scare you when you know they're just projections. Discipline is remembering this truth again and again, until it becomes second nature. When you live this way, the outer world loses its power to shake you. Think about how most people live. They wake up, check their phone, get triggered by news, stressed about bills, annoyed by traffic, and they spend the rest of the day imagining more problems without even realizing it. Then they wonder why life feels heavy. That's undisciplined imagination at work. Now picture someone who wakes up, centers themselves, imagines their desired life with gratitude, and keeps returning to that inner vision no matter what happens during the day. Who do you think will live a more powerful life? It's obvious. And the difference is not intelligence or talent, it's discipline. Let's make this practical. If you wanted to build discipline Neville's way, you'd start with a small daily routine. Every night before sleep, you would pick one desire and live in the end of it. Not for an hour. Just for a few vivid minutes, until you feel the reality of it. And then you'd fall asleep in that state. That's discipline, choosing to end your day in the world you want, instead of replaying fears or regrets. If you did this for 30 days straight, you'd be shocked at the changes you begin to notice. Life will bend. People will shift. Opportunities will appear. And all because you were disciplined enough to hold a state consistently. The truth is, people think discipline is hard, but what's really hard is living the same problems over and over because you refuse to discipline your mind. It's hard to stay broke. It's hard to stay in toxic relationships. It's hard to stay stuck. So if life is going to be hard anyway, why not choose the kind of discipline that frees you? Neville's message was always one of freedom, that imagination, once disciplined, liberates you from the chains of circumstance. Let me ask you something. Can you remember a time in your life when you wanted something so badly that you kept imagining it over and over? Maybe it was passing an exam, maybe it was getting a job, maybe it was hearing back from someone you loved. You probably didn't even call it imagination, you just thought about it constantly. And then, didn't it somehow work out? That's the power of focused attention. The difference now is, Neville teaches you to do it deliberately, with discipline, instead of leaving it to chance. And here's where most people trip. They get inspired, they practice for a week, then they stop because they don't see results fast enough. But think about planting a seed. Do you water it once and walk away? Or do you care for it daily, trusting that growth is happening underground before you ever see it? Discipline is that daily watering of your imagination. You may not see results at first, but something is shifting in the unseen. And when it finally breaks through, it often feels like a miracle. But it was never a miracle. It was disciplined creation. Now imagine this. Imagine if every person disciplined themselves to imagine peace instead of fear, love instead of hate, abundance instead of lack. The entire world would change. Because the world is nothing more than the collective imagination of its people. That's how powerful discipline can be, not only for your personal life, but for humanity. Neville wasn't just teaching self-help. He was teaching a new way to live, where disciplined imagination becomes the foundation of a better world. So if you take one thing from this, let it be this: don't leave your imagination undisciplined. Don't let fear and doubt write your future. Take control. Be consistent. Return to the end you desire, again and again, until it becomes your natural state. That's when the shift happens. That's when life begins to mirror back your inner discipline. And that's when you'll finally understand what Neville Goddard meant when he said, "You are the operant power."